Okay. I wanted to, before we get to the Torah portion, I wanted to just sort of start today with a little bit of testimony. Now, Denise and I didn't come from a Torah or Pentecostal background, as Bill always talks about. We came from a Calvary Chapel. Any other Calvary Chapel people in here? Former Calvary Chapel folks? Handful, okay, handful. And did you all see the recent movie, Jesus Revolution? Have you seen that? Some of y'all? Yeah, that's us. That's Calvary Chapel. If you didn't know that, all right? That was the church we came from. And Pastor Chuck and Greg Laurie, they were our leaders amongst many others. And some of you might remember, let's see, Bob, you're old enough, you might remember. Do you remember the Jesus Revolution? The Jesus movement back in the late 60s, early 70s? Okay, all the hippies getting baptized on the beach. That was Calvary Chapel too, believe it or not. This sounds like an infomercial for Calvary Chapel. It's really not. We're going somewhere with this someday. But that movement back there, with those all the kids coming in amidst the sexual revolution and the drugs and Vietnam and everything else that was going on, was Calvary Chapel's heyday. That was Pastor Chuck's heyday. And it was a very big thing. And it was something that was so much bigger than them that only our Father could have done something like that. Only our Father could have done that. But after the excitement of those days, Calvary Chapel did what most denominations do. They settled in, they planted churches, okay? They did missions work and conferences, and they got comfortable. And don't take anything I'm going to say as criticism, because that's really what churches did back then. That's what churches are still doing today. They got kind of comfortable, and the leaders, well, this may be a shock to you, but they got old. Now, one of the things that I remember from the Calvary Chapel movement that got really, really popular, it's the thing that I looked forward to the most every year, was the prophecy conferences. Do you guys remember those? I know a lot of churches did them, and Bill did them, and a lot of places did them, but I just loved them. And it was long before live streaming, so you couldn't just tune in and listen, but you could go to the prophecy conference website, and the text was there, back then when there was just the text. And pretty soon all the little MP3s would start populating, and you could download them and listen to them. It was amazing. Now, Calvary Chapel was a pre-trib church, pre-trib rapture church, like a lot of churches. But for them, it was a major. Most churches, it's like, well, we think this is what's going to happen. With them, this is what's going to happen, and if you don't believe that, then you're dumb. All right? So they were pre-trib. And so anytime something happened in Israel, anytime something happened in Europe, anytime something happened in Russia or China, any new little bit of terrorist activity, people get ready. Get your white shirt on, get up on the roof, and start practicing your rapture jumps, because it's happening. It is happening. And while I was never a really big pre-trib guy, it was easy to get caught up in. It really was. It's super easy to get caught up in that stuff. So, people who had their heyday, people who are comfortable, people who are successful, and people who are starting to get old, they quit thinking about this. All they start thinking about is those mansions in heaven, right? Okay? And that mindset bothered me, because I wasn't an old guy like I am now. I was a young guy. And I hadn't had my heyday yet. And there were things that Yah was talking to me about. Plans, goals, things that I thought that I felt like he was putting on my heart to do. He, by the way, is still talking to me about those things, the big things that only he can do. We'll get to all that in a little bit. Now, 2 weeks ago, there was a big thing that happened, right? Hamas, Israel, war, the end of the world, okay? And the longer this thing goes on, the more that you're going to start seeing books written, DVDs made. I'm sure your YouTube feed is starting to fill with the teachings. All the usual suspects are getting their videos out. Because why would you let a good crisis go to waste? Sounds like criticism. It's just an observation. All right? But the question we want to ask today is, what does a believer do when it's the end of the world? What does a believer do? So with that, we'll get to the Torah portion. Today's Torah portion is Noach. It's Genesis 6:9, so after the interesting stuff. All the way through chapter 11. No. Very interesting stuff this week. But when I start reading today, I wanted to back up to verse 8, if that's all right. So Genesis 6:8. But Noah found favor in the eyes of Yahweh. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, without defect in his generations. Noah walked with God, and Noah fathered 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And the earth was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. Now, Yeshua said in Matthew 24:37 that just as the days of Noah were, so the coming of the Son of Man will be. All right? But let's go back to think about that for just a second, because that's going to be another big theme through the whole day, all right? Or through the whole teaching anyway. But going back to Genesis chapter 8, one of the first things we see there is that Noah found favor. How many people in here today, just raise your hand, stand up, scream, whatever. Let me know if you've found favor right now. Anybody? I gotta stand up. I think there was a woo over here somewhere. There's a bunch of people over here who haven't found it yet. Anybody? Okay. We have a group of people on earth right now, and has been on earth, who has found favor in the eyes of our Father, haven't we? Just like our brother Noah. All right? And starting with faith, he believed Yah as his fathers did. And he lived in a wicked world, and he knew by faith that Messiah was coming. Amen? And their names reflected that faith. Do you remember, you've probably heard that teaching before. I think I first heard it from Chuck Missler, but you go down through the list of names in that first generation and how it all points to Messiah and how they kept naming their kids. Do you remember what Noah's name was? He shall bring what? Rest. Rest. Good Sabbath name. Okay. Well, we found that same faith in the Sunday church, didn't we? Most of us came from the Sunday church. I mean, there's some younger folks in here who probably were raised by following in Torah. But we found that faith in the Sunday church. The revelation of Yeshua's Messiah, who is coming to rescue us from a fallen, wicked, violent world. Okay, Noah had that faith. Noah was also righteous in his generation. And it says that he was without defect. Now, that word, that phrase, without defect, anybody want to take a guess at what Hebrew word that is? It's one of our favorites. Damim, that's right. Different translation than we're accustomed to. And we understand this Hebrew word, tamim. Now, when you go look that word up in that form, you will find that most of the time that word is talking about the sacrifice. How a sacrifice was supposed to be without defect. And so some, I know Missler has talked about it some, and there's others, who have surmised that Noah was physically without defect, in the sense that he was one of the last uncorrupted humans on earth. And there may be something to that. I don't know. I wasn't there. I know I look like I could have been there, but I wasn't. Okay? But I think that what he did was he was without defect because he combined his faith with obedience, right? Yahweh could come and talk to him, and he would do it, even though it was probably way beyond him. It was something so big, only Yahweh could do it through him. You can hear me say that a lot today. Now, we believe Yah, and so it's our desire to obey him as well, right? We understand the faith that Noah had because we have that faith, and we've had that faith. But we're learning now to obey his instructions. And there's a word for that, a word that described Noah. It's righteousness. When we combine the faith with obedience, that comes out to righteousness. That's what he's looking for in his people, right? That's what he hopes for in his people. We sing a song about that. And like Noah, we're doing that without a temple or a priesthood or a Torah-based government or even a believing king. We're doing that without that. See, Noah was in exile. What exile was he part of? The first one, when they got kicked out of the garden. We're in exile. We don't live in the land. That's why we don't have those things. But Noah could be righteous before Messiah came and without all those things. And you know what I want to encourage you? There is a righteousness that you can have without a temple, without a tabernacle, without a priesthood, without those things, at least not physical ones on this earth. And we know spiritually, obviously. Noah walked with Yahweh. Now, that phrase, we've seen a couple different times, right? Enoch walked with Yahweh and he said, come here, I got something for you to do. Noah walked with Yahweh and he said, come here, I got something for you to do. Abraham walked with Yahweh and he said, come here, I've got someplace for you to go and then some stuff for you to do. So would it make sense that if we have the same faith as Noah, and that if we are learning to obey the way Noah was, that he would look at us and say, come here, I have something for you to do. Does that make sense? That's not a stretch, right? No, Genesis 6:10 says that Noah fathered 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So Noah had children. If he had children, that implies that he had something else. What would that be? A wife. Yes. He's walking with Yahweh, so anyway, never mind. We're not going there. Now, having a wife gives a man great insight into the nature of a covenant relationship. Having children is good training for leadership and shepherding. That sounds so spiritual and insightful, doesn't it? Theological even. Now, do you know, this is sort of a side thing. I'm going to get back to that thought in a minute. But how many of you guys have been kind of following Isaac Hinkle's progress through the Marine Corps? Do you know what he's doing this weekend? Crucible, that's right. 54 hours with only 6 hours of duty with only 6 hours of sleep. 48 something miles that he will travel in these 54 hours. 3 MREs is all he will get to eat. 2? Okay, the website says 3, but I'm going to go with 2 because that sounds even more dramatic. And all throughout those miles, there will be constant tests and evaluations and combat tasks and team things and heavy lifting and suffering that only a Marine could truly appreciate. But at the end of that, he will be called something. A Marine. Amen. They will walk right through that and go, good job, Marine. Good job, Marine. Good job, Marine. Kind of a hoo-ah thing. Oh, no, not a hoo-ah thing, sorry. Kind of a ooh-rah thing to think about this morning. But getting back to the idea of marriage, I want to tell you the truth about marriage. Where's the 20-year-old guys? Raise your hand, fellas. There's you guys are. I want to tell you the truth about marriage. Marriage is the crucible. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Isaac, for joining the Marines at just the right time so I could use that as an illustration. She's right there, and she knows. Yeah. Marriage is the crucible. Marriage and family is the crucible that tests men. Okay? So Noah had faith. Noah was walking with Yah, and Noah was married. Do you know what that means? He's being prepared. All right? Consider that. Or here's some of the things that marriage will test in a person. Can you love someone more than yourself? Is that people who are married, is that true? That's tested. Can you overcome your selfishness? Is that tested? Absolutely it is. Can you work tirelessly for another's sake? Yep, that's tested. Will you truly give everything? Yep. And are you going to quit when things get difficult? It's a crucible. Okay? Now, 20-year-olds, listen. If you're hearing that and you're thinking, well, I'm going to skip that test altogether, I want to point out that almost all the patriarchs were family guys, married guys. There's a few exceptions. Daniel, Paul is the one I'm thinking of. And if you think that it'll be easier to be single, think about Paul's crucible. That one was a little different, right? He got to spend 3.5 years with Yeshua only to get benched for 14. Benched. Go make tents. Like it. That's where we get that whole phrase. I'm making tents. That's where we get that from. It's from Paul and the time where he was benched. I forgot something in the middle there, but I'll come back to it. Then he got shipwrecked. Then he got sent to prison. There was one time, whether him or another, I don't know, in body, out of body, I don't know, where he was stoned to death with rocks, not with the green stuff. His crucible was different, but just as hard. So I'm going to recommend getting a wife because at least you can hug her at night. Oh, yes. The other thing we read in that verse that we were in that set of verses, was that the earth was corrupt and filled with violence. Now, Pastor Bill covered this pretty well last week. I don't feel the need to rehearse that. But I do want to take you back to another time. Thinking along those lines, the earth is corrupt. The earth is filled with violence. Who remembers December 7th, 1941? Anybody? Who just knows the date? All right, I know the date. A couple of you guys were there. Who is that? Walt? Yeah, you were probably there. Or I don't know about there, but you were alive. Do you know that was a Sunday morning? Remember that from the movies? Yeah, it was a Sunday morning. So that means that as Americans were waking up that day, some of them were getting ready to go to church. Some of them were getting ready to cut the grass. Some of them were washing their car. But they were doing their usual Sunday morning thing. And as the day went on, I knew this was going to happen. Go away. Oh, good, it didn't crash. Anyway, so they're doing their daily activity, but at some point during the day, or for sure by the next morning, the news started trickling in. There was an attack on the naval base in Hawaii. It was unprovoked. Ships were destroyed. People died. As the president said, it was a day that will live in. Oh man, we're good. We're good Americans. We know that stuff. But many years later, we found out that what we were told about Pearl Harbor wasn't quite the full story, right? It was actually something else. And I don't need to go into what it was and all that stuff. We just understand that something else actually happened that day, not what we were told. And there are many, many examples in this period of history that we've been going through since then where that happened again and again and again. And the most recent one, of course, is COVID. Yeah, 9/11's in there. I wasn't going to touch that one, Mike. But I think we agree on that. Probably just said way too much there. Getting back to COVID, we thought one thing in March of 2020, right? 2 weeks. 2 weeks. 3 years later, we know it was something else entirely, wasn't it? I'm curious what we will find out about this attack in Israel. Ooh, got real quiet in here. We didn't mind you talking about COVID, but don't you talk about Israel like that. I'm wondering what we're going to find out. And here's the point. It's not to sell conspiracies. Here's the point. In Noah's day, with its corruption, with its violence, it wasn't good versus evil. It was just evil. What did it say? Genesis 6:5 says, "And Yahweh saw that the evil of humankind was great upon the earth, and every inclination of the thoughts of his heart was always only evil." And what does evil require? What's evil going to get? Judgment, right? Judgment. So we're coming full circle. This is a description of Noah's day. But it might as well be a description of our day. What did Yeshua say? Just as the days of Noah were, so will the coming of the Son of Man be. There's a group of people on earth who have found the favor. There's a group of people who are walking with Yah, learning his ways again and pursuing righteousness. We're a family. Dysfunctional, factioned, obviously raised by wolves, but we're a family, just like Noah was, with sons and daughters, learning to overcome sin and selfishness, learning to love one another as neighbors. And we live on an earth that is corrupt and filled with violence. Are we in the days of Noah? I think so. Have we achieved only evil always? I don't know if we've quite gotten all the meter pegged on that one. There might get a little worse. Now, have I told you anything you don't know yet? Nope, probably not. Noah's experiences are our experiences. Noah's world is our world. We are inching closer every day to the judgment that will come. Not a flood. Different. So what does a believer do when the end of the world is near? And the answer is, you build an ark. I'm not telling you that you need to go to your backyard right now and build a 450-foot long, 75 feet wide, 50-something feet high boat. That was Noah's task. But let me read this for you. Genesis 6:14 through 16. Make for yourself an ark of cypress wood. You must make the ark with rooms, and then you must cover it with pitch, inside and outside. And this is how you must make it. The length of the ark, 300 cubits, its width 50 cubits, its height 30 cubits. You must make a roof for the ark and finish it to a cubit above. Means leave some room for some light to come in and some air, animals. Whew. And as for the door of the ark, you must put it on its side, and you must make it with lower, second, and third decks. You know, some of the videos that are out right now are trying to suggest that what's happening in Israel right now is what's described in Ezekiel 38 and 39. There are people right now who are just itching for somebody to attack from the north so they can say, see, it's happening right now. I don't know if that's what's happening. That remains to be seen. But if we go past birth pangs, if we get to the point where the water is breaking and the baby's coming, you, me, congregations, Israel, I think we'll start hearing Yah tell us to do something big. Because if judgment really is coming sooner than we think, because I mean, how many people think we're at 7-year point right here? Colleen says, I do. Mansions in heaven, right? Yeah. I think Yah's going to start telling us to do something big, if he isn't already. Something way beyond us, something only he can do through us, something like this ark. So let's consider the ark for a minute. I think most of us were probably taught that Noah was going into the woods. He was chopping down trees. Whack, whack, whack. He was stripping off the bark. He was splitting out boards like Charles Ingalls and dragging them over to the construction site. And it may have happened that way. It may have. Okay. But 250 years ago or so, when we were formed as a country, we were horse and buggy. We were chopping down trees. We were stripping off bark. We were splitting out boards, and we were carrying those to our house. Well, Noah was 500 when Yah came to talk about him. And people had been on earth for 1,000 years beforehand. I'm just saying, Noah may have had a little bit more than an iron axe and an iron splitting maul. And I think they may have known stuff about building and carpentry that we haven't even thought of yet. You know what I mean? Like, Jerry, how long you been building now? 60, 50? 50 years? 40 years? Yeah, Ken, is Ken here? Where's he? Ken, how long you been building now? You helped Noah? Noah's apprentice. Yeah. You're looking good for that old Ken. 50 years? Maybe? Yeah? Okay, so now we're up to 80 years. And then Jim Flanagan here? I don't know. He's a young guy. He's probably only been building about 30 years or so. That's less than, is that 100 years? Did we get to 100 years there? Yeah, a little over maybe, 100 years? Yeah. That's our best builders in this congregation put together, don't have the kind of experience that they had back then. But no matter what kind of experience they had, building a boat that big was a big job. And it was supposed to be a big job. Amen? I like that. Do you build too? So, would I need to? Yeah. It was a big job. Now, I was on this job a couple weeks ago. No, it was probably a couple months ago. Getting a little old. Forget stuff. And when he talked to me, he said, I just need a couple holes dig. Can you just come help me dig a few post holes? And I was like, sure, I can do that. So I showed up, and as I was packing up, I really felt like how I said, bring your big steel rod. Bring that big iron rod that you have. I'm like, okay. And when I got there, sure enough, chert. Big rocks. I thought I was going to be there an hour. I was there 6, almost 7 to dig 4 holes. Yeah. And the guy who hired me, really neat guy. Really neat guy. He just moved from shady spot to shady spot to shady spot. And he talked my ear off the whole time, which was fine because he was a pretty interesting guy to listen to. Talked my ear off. But at one point during that conversation, as we started talking about some spiritual things and what's God talking to you about and stuff like that, he told me it's the big things. The things way over your pay grade. The things way outside your comfort zone. Those are the ones worth doing. If you get picked to do something like that, do it. That's what Noah got picked for. Something that big. He said, if you don't have any experience in doing that, if you have no training in that, if you have no degree in that, if it's things you never once thought, I want to do that, that's what you need to be doing. That's probably what he's going to talk to us about as the days get closer and closer. That's what we're looking forward to. Now, how long was, I have a question. Jude, how long was Moses building that ark? 0 years? Why? How long was Moses building that ark? Ah, good boy. Your parents must teach you some Bible once in a while. It's probably your mama. How long was Moses building the ark? Or excuse me, Noah. Huh? How long? 120? Anybody got another answer? 100? I lean towards 100, but Mike, if it's 120, you could be right. 120 years, somewhere in there. That's a long time to be doing one thing, isn't it? 100 years. Jerry, could you imagine that? Chop, 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 strip, 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 drop. Hopefully there was something more high tech. Hopefully they had a truck. Hopefully in 1,500 years, somebody thought up a truck. You know, a Kubota with a grapple. A mill, super helpful, you know? But that's a long time. Why do you think he had to make that so hard? 100 years. Okay? Well, these big things, if Yah puts that on your heart, it's probably going to take some time. And you remember, and the same way that marriage and family can test a man, so can, or a woman, so can having to do something for a long time. Now, how many people know how old Noah was when he died? Anybody? 900, I'm hearing. 930, it's 950. 950 years. Good thing I looked that up. So if Noah lived to 950 and he was building the ark for 100, that's roughly 10% of his life, right? What would that be in our lifetime, you think? 8 to 10 years? Okay, so let's put this in perspective. We don't live long enough to be asked to do something for 100 years nowadays. Okay. But what if he asked you to do something for 10 years? For 8 years? What if he said, look, I'm going to give you this job to do. It's going to be hard. You may not feel very fulfilled at the end of it. Okay? There's going to be some parts that are absolutely terrifying, and there's going to be some parts that are absolutely boring. But at the end, I'm going to be super happy with what you did, and it's going to preserve life. Would you do it? Would you do it? Oh, you say that now. You haven't heard what this job is. Why would he give him a job that would take 100 years? Because, Yah could have made that boat just appear, right? Boom. There it is. Fully stocked with animals, full of good food, lots of wine. Wine always makes it in somehow, doesn't it? Full of everything you need. And he could have just said, Noah, move on in. It's move in ready. Just bring your toothbrush. I even put clothes in there for you. He could have done that, right? He could have put a house on the tallest mountain, right at the top of it. Again, fully stocked. And just said, I'm going to take you to the mountain. The water's only going to come up this high, right to your doorstep. You can dip some out and take a drink if you want. He could have just pulled Noah up to heaven. Could have just said, excuse me, you've done it before with Enoch. Could have just said, whoop, and then whoop, right back down, put him in a place. He could have done any of those things, but he gave him that job because for 100 years, while he was being faithful in what he was being told to do, what else could he do? Yeah. Hey, Noah, what you building, man? A boat. I think they knew what a boat is. After 1,500 years, surely somebody had thought of a boat. Bass, they did still fish for bass, I'm sure, and a bass fisherman would have been the one to discover it, right? Where's John? Okay, you Millers. One of those Millers would have figured it out. They got the wrong name. It should be Fishers, actually, but that's not, neither here nor there. Somebody would have figured that thing. What you building, Noah? About? Well, why are you building it here? Because God told me to. But there's no water here. Oh, there will be. Yeah, just wait. Really, when's it coming? So glad you asked about that. He could preach righteousness, repentance, and take breaks from his work for 100 years. I think that's something that he had in mind, because Yahweh just doesn't do instant things, does he? Always lets people get time to hear the truth, to make a decision. He always gives people that time. So if he's putting something on your mind because the end is near, realize it's going to take some time. It's going to take some time. But we're impatient. So if you have a crazy idea on your mind right now, if you have something that he's been talking to you about, well, I'm going to get to that in a minute. What was the purpose of the ark? What was the purpose? We've talked about kind of like about the form, but what was the purpose? Jerry, you were saying something? To save, to preserve life, right? To save Noah, to save his family, to save his family. Who was the one who was righteous? Noah. And what did he do? He saved his, hold on to that. Hold on to that. All right? But to save life. The word ark, the word, is only used to refer to two things. The ark that Noah built and the ark that Moses' mama built. Both of them were sealed with pitch. Both of them preserved life. That's the only time this word is used. So we should probably look at what this word is, right? Fun fact, the Ark of the Covenant, the word ark for Ark of the Covenant, completely different word. Completely different purpose, right? So we have a Hebrew word, Tebet, there we go, or Tabat, excuse me. Means ark, chest, or cabinet. And if you look, Hebrew students, what letters do we have up there? Tav, Bet, and Tav. That was a really easy one, right? Didn't throw like a Sadi or something or an ayin in there. Yeah, really easy. Tav, Bet, Tav. Now in Paleo, the Tav means mark, sign, or covenant. All right? And Beit is house or inn. If you use a prefix, it means inn. All right, so we have a couple of options of what this word in Paleo can be interpreted as. And we love Paleo, right? Anybody not love Paleo? Well, you're too afraid to raise your hand. That's fine. We have a couple of options on what this word can mean. Either the house of the covenant, so Beit, house, Tav, covenant. You could say house of the double covenant. That would be an interesting thing to discuss during Midrash. All right? You could also say that Noach was in the house of the covenant, or some people like to throw sealed in there because both were sealed inside and out. So the house, or he was sealed in the house of the covenant. Any of those are pretty cool, right? I kind of like when judgment is coming to a wicked, violent world, Yah seals his remnant in a house that is protected, sealed by his covenant to preserve life. Come on. And that's the function of the ark. And we love function around here, right? That's the function of the ark. So if that's the function of the ark for Noah, for the animals, for Moshe, then how would that apply to our ark, to the thing that he wants to do in our life? Because our big God thing that he's putting or will put on our heart as we get nearer and nearer to judgment should have something to do with preserving the life of the remnant. Okay? Now, if the big idea on your heart is to set people straight on, I don't know, Nephilim, fallen angels, flat earth, other stuff, calendar, help me, I'm lost in name, how the name is pronounced, yeah. Seats, what's wrong? Do it. Are they not long enough? Okay, they're fine? Okay, good. Nah, they're not long enough for that. Anyway, if the big idea on your heart is to set people straight, then that may not be it. Let me rephrase that. That's not it. That's not the big idea. Okay? Because it doesn't preserve life. It just makes you feel good about being right. And being right is special, but not important right now. Not important in the face of judgment coming. And believe me, you set straighters, I was you. But I've been healed. Hallelujah. Mostly. I know exactly how you feel. And I think a lot of us in this room probably know how you feel, because for the first, 5, 6 years of this walk, you're just arguing with people. And then somewhere in the between 5 and 50 years in this walk, you get over that, right? And then you start thinking, you know what's more important? Preserving life. Preserving life. You guys are going to have a lot of time for lunch today. Because this slide says conclusion. And either I lost some slides in there somewhere, or we're just going to go with conclusion. So let's tie all this up together. We've come full circle. Yah's people have found grace in his eyes again. That's happened. That's been going on for a while now. More recently, we are learning to walk in his ways and be obedient again. Yah is testing and trying his people through all kinds of means, including marriage and family, to prepare us to be ready for his purpose near the end. And we are being set apart from a wicked and violent generation that is bringing us closer and closer to the judgment every day. And in short, we're back in the days of Noah, just as Messiah said it would be. And with each new birth pang, like the recent activity in Israel, there will be people who start making teachings. There will be people who start predicting things. And like I said, I'm sure your feed's full of them. And I'm not telling you not to listen to them, because they might be right. I don't necessarily think so, but they might be right. But even if they are, don't panic. I'm looking at you, preppers. Right? Noah didn't bunker up. He got busy. And despite what you may have heard from other expert preppers on the internet, what's coming, you don't prep your way out of. One word, buddies: drones. Just saying. Pretty big deal. I'm not telling you not to prep. But if Yah's telling you to prep, it's not for bunkering. It's for something else. It's for preserving life. And I've heard a couple of you guys talk about that. I'm prepping to preserve life. Hallelujah. Keep doing that. So you can sell your guns and your ammo and buy food. I'll take the gold. I'll use it for a very good purpose. So, rather than that, like Noah, expect Yah to start showing you something, all right? He will show it to you early. It's not recorded, but I wonder how many times Yah had to come to Noah and say, hey, about that ark thing, we've been talking about this. I kind of need you to decide you're going to do it. I know in my life, when he starts talking to me about something, it can be 6 months, a year, 2 years in advance. Because it's going to take that long for this head to get on the same page that he's on. Anybody give a witness to that? Yeah, okay. If he's not talking to you yet, just look around at the hands that went up. All right? It's true. He's going to tell you early. You're going to get a lot of time to think about it. He's going to wake you up in the middle of the night. He's going to poke you while you're working. He's, doing that thing that you do that doesn't require a lot of mental activity. That kind of thing. He's going to tell you early. And here's my suggestion. Journal it. Take everything he's ever told you and write it all down, or type it in if you're more of a typer, right? Journal it. And every time he wakes you up, journal it. Every time he shows you something from somebody teaching, journal it. Make a big, fat journal of the big, fat thing that he's trying to get you to do. Because you're going to need to go back. Especially because after a couple months, you're going to go, did he really talk to me? After a couple months, if you share it with your wife and she goes, what? You're going to go, no, seriously, look, he's been telling me this stuff. Look, I got a whole journal full. Then she can go, what? Denise never does that. I dragged her all over the place. But journal it. If somebody comes and gives you a word about it, journal it. Because he's done all of those things for us. Full disclosure, he's talking to me about something. And Denise and I have been journaling it and talking about it and going through it. We have a whole book full of stuff. Actually, it's scattered over a couple books, but journal it. And the other thing is be careful who you share your crazy with, okay? Because it's going to sound crazy. And if you share it with everybody far and wide, put it on Instagram, put it on Facebook, you're going to get a lot of discouragement. That's not him. What are you talking about? And that's the last thing you need, okay? It'll be pretty obvious if it's him or not. And the longer you are, okay, I still believe you. Okay, I'm still trusting you. Okay, I'm writing this down and I'm reading it. The more it's going to firm up in your mind. You don't need other people's opinions on that. But I have shared my crazy with a few people, and so if I've shared it with you, then you're special. To me, anyway. To me. Because I figured, well, you'll honestly pray and not discourage me. Ryan, I told you, you're my favorite. One day I'll share with you. Garrett, don't tell Ryan, but you're my favorite. Okay, listen. How does Bill do this? Well, let me think. Circle, highlight, underline, exclamation points. If it's the end of the world as we know it, I feel fine. Amen?